Well, this is a short story that I wrote a little while back called Forgotten. Here it goes. Tell me, little one, what do you see? What do you see when you look out there? The giant said, as he stared in the direction of the horizon. He looked into the sun. As if the sun had answers. He doesn't have much for eyes anymore because his eyes have burnt out. He can see, but only in small glances. And the girl that he holds in his hand, she stares in the same direction. And she says, I see forgotten dreams. No more hope. Loss of love. Forgotten beauty. The giant, a little puzzled, looks at her, a little strange, as if she was looking into a sage's eyes, wondering and thinking, where did this wisdom come from? Where did such a prolific and strange statement come from? What kind of cynicism drives this? He says, what do you mean? Don't you see the marvelous wonders and the beauties like the rest of mankind? Do you not know what these mountains and clouds, these shapes that they make? Do you not know how strange and marvelous they are? The songs of the earth as everything moves, and the words of the air. Does that not strike you as something astonishing? Not taken aback, the girl quickly responds and says, well, they're great and all, but I think that they're forgotten by most. They've transformed from an eyewitness marvel into literature, and from literature into a movie or an idea. And from movies and ideas, they turn into a myth. There's something that isn't real anymore to people. It's something that people only think about and think that they know already. True beauty and fascination is something hard to imagine. Even when people come to witness these things, it takes them a while to recognize that this is even real anymore. They think that they know it. They, and I, even perhaps you, giant, feel like it's all already known, like it's all been seen before. It takes something profound to waken us up from that kind of a stupor. So, the giant, almost wanting to challenge the statement, says, so you think we can't appreciate what stares us right in the face, what is right under our nose? Little one, where did you come up with such an insight? What drove you to this point of cynicism? Are you like the rest who cannot and will not believe in beauty? The girl looks to her side as if briefly ashamed, but then looks back out at the mountains and back towards the giant. She says, I think I forgot these things myself for a time, but something shook me awake. I believe in beauty. But it's just something that's difficult to differentiate between something that I think I know more about. Because I've grown so used to all these borrowed qualities I have. Like the temporary abilities that I have, the intellect, the physical beauty. These things that fade away, this life that is fleeting, I've come to trust in that. And I question even now, what is beauty? Is it something that evolves with time? Are they things that are eternal? And even then, what is eternality? Can I even know what that is when I live in the temporary? The giant stopped looking at the mountains. His eyes narrow on the girl. He wore a sad smile as he started saying to her, Child beauty is definitely a forgotten dream. I think you're right, and I've heard many, too many mortals who think that they know what it is. They think that they know what love is. They try, and the game becomes a game of pretend. They create miserable replications of what they think love should look like. Beauty is perhaps, though, even more distorted than that. I mean, truly, what is it? Is it a pretty woman or a handsome man? Is it a sunset or a healthy state of being, a lush meal or a warm bed after a hard day's work? Truly, what is beauty? What is it? What makes it? Is it small? Is it great? Is it both? Is it in you? Is it in myself? What makes beauty real or true? Do you think that we can even know it at all? The girl pondered again for a moment. It seemed hard for her to come up with a succinct answer, but she shook her head, smiled and tried, and just said, Giant, these are questions that neither insight or person can answer with one word or provide a one fix-it-all answer. You've seen it for ages in both the small and the great, but you forgot it as well. If you're asking these kinds of questions, you gotta remember that it is small, and it is great. The weak and the strong are beautiful in their own way. Life itself is too short and the existence too brief to not appreciate the miracle that we're even all alive, is it not? Beauty is like a diamond with many facets, too many to count. And it's not the gleam, it's the facets, it's the amount of different shapes and sizes. There isn't one answer. But it's how you look at it. I think that's how people either love each other or don't. They either only look at a few facets or even focus only on one. And that's what makes things fail. What makes beauty so real is when they keep looking and exploring at all the intricacies of each and every facet as long as they can and as much as they can. When two look at each other and explore every inch that they can, for as long as they can. But people don't naturally do that, because they only remember the borrowed qualities. I think that's how people either love each other or don't. It's the willingness, again, to keep exploring and knowing that each and every facet is there, rather than making up what the rest should look like, or what it should look like specifically to them. A catered beauty. Beauty is a pursuit to understand not only the delicacy, but the immensity of what the day, the time, the space, and the encounters that we have, what is given to us, them simply for what they are. The child stopped. The giant's eyes widened a little bit. He responded, I suppose you're right. But then, what do you see in front of you? If you're awakening each day more and more from this kind of a dream. Her answer was simple. She said, I see the same things as you, maybe from a different perspective. I think that's what makes us appreciate it all the more, since what we have is a different suggestion or a different perception. They're the same and they're not. They're here and yet different for both of us. And quickly the giant said, okay, okay. So, what do you see when you look at me? Do you see that monster like all the rest? Do you see the darkness or the ugliness? Do you see the fear or do you see the anger? If so, how can that be beautiful? Would I not be an exception to your definition? The child squinted her eyes and frowned. And out of her mouth came giant. You have a heart, don't you? Yes, child, I'd be dead otherwise. You ask questions, don't you? What would I have been doing through this whole time we've been with each other otherwise? The girl smiled even bigger and put her hand on his hand and said, Giant, you love with a love that isn't appreciated or understood. What would you do, or how do you... What you do and how you do it is what makes you specifically so remarkable and so beautiful. It is a forgotten art of how to appreciate yourself, how to love yourself, perhaps even more so. We have not only just forgotten, but we disdain trying to remember it because we're so used to and we're so locked in our own misery. We'd rather crawl into ourselves and hide, spitting out profanities and proclaiming that things aren't enough. Beauty is in all things created by God. And yet, here we are, trying to mask it, trying to hide that beauty, trying to hide that light. We pretend that it isn't there, and we treat it even more so like underwear. And I know that sounds funny, but truly, it's as if the damage is all that is there, like the brokenness is all that it can be. We hide ourselves. Don't you think that's just a little bit sad? And the giant was quick to respond, sad it is, but how can you stop? It's not like you have a shut off button or pretend. You can't just pretend. You can't pretend like it isn't there, all of that brokenness, right? Right. The girl said, and I think it's kind of like a ghost. You can believe it. You can believe in ghosts. You can believe that there and give more power to it simply by thinking about it, dreaming about it. You can believe it's there. And when you talk to more people about it, the more real it becomes. If you give power to these kinds of negative thoughts, they will only grow stronger. Don't you think? The giant wasn't happy with the answer and said, that doesn't answer how to stop it. Oh, but giant, you have to ask for it to even begin. You have to ask for change. Giant hung his face and he said, Dear God, what does it even look like to begin? And the child said, you have to ask to find out, don't you? It's all one and the same. You have to ask. The giant and the child closed their eyes and prayed a simple prayer, saying, God, help us. Help us to see that what we think beauty looks like isn't enough, but show us what true beauty is. Let us trust you that you will show us. Help us to simply love ourselves first, that we may love others and appreciate the beauty of ourselves, of others, and of this beautiful world that you've crafted, and let that be more than enough. Amen. The giant and the child opened their eyes, thinking that the world would change, but things were as they were. Perhaps it was as if the scales fell from their eyes like a shade of darkness. They believed that the darkness in their eyes had lifted just a little bit more. That maybe, just maybe, true beauty could be remembered once more.